You know, if you've ever sat in a language class, you're actually part of this long and kind of dramatic history. So today, let's open up that classroom door and see how the way we teach languages has been totally transformed over the centuries. At the end of the day, language has always been about one thing, right? Connection. It's this deep, fundamental human need to share ideas, to tell stories, and to just, connect with each other. And that part, well, that's never changed. Okay, but here's the big question, the puzzle that's going to drive our whole story today. If that basic goal, connection, has always been the same, then why have our methods for getting there changed so much? Well, the answer starts in a place I like to call the age of rules. All right, so our journey kicks off in an era that I bet a lot of you will find a little too familiar. It's an age all about structure, precision, and, yeah, you guessed it, rules. Just tons and tons of rules. For a really long time, this was it. This was the gold standard, the grammar translation method. And look, the main goal here wasn't about, ordering a coffee in Paris. Nope. It was all about training your brain, developing your intellect so you could read classical literature. The language itself, it was treated like a super complex code you had to decipher, one little piece at a time. So, what did it actually feel like to be in one of these classrooms? Well, picture this. It's super quiet, everyone's focused. The teacher is the absolute authority, the expert at the front of the room explaining a grammar rule, and your job is just to memorize long lists of words and translate sentences. That's it. It was methodical, super structured, and really silent. And here we go. This is the first stop on our little visual timeline of the classroom. Just look at it. It's all about silent, individual work, right? The most important relationship in this room wasn't with the person next to you, it was with the book on your desk. But then, things started to change. The world was changing, and that meant the whole idea of what it even means to know a language started to shift. A revolution was brewing. And this one? Oh, this one was going to be loud. And I'm not kidding, this shift was absolutely seismic. All of a sudden, the goal wasn't reading anymore. It was speaking. Your own native language, which you used to lean on, totally forbidden in the classroom. And grammar? Forget memorizing rules. Now it was all about forming habits. This whole new way of thinking led to something called the audiolingual method. Now, language wasn't a puzzle to solve, it was a behavior to be conditioned. I mean, the classroom literally echoed with drills. Listen and repeat. Listen and repeat. The whole point was to make the right answer automatic, almost like a reflex. But why? Why this sudden obsession with habits and repeating things over and over? Well, this wasn't just some new fad in teaching. No, it was actually driven by a huge, powerful new idea from psychology that was completely changing how we understood the human mind. And that big idea was behaviorism. You gotta remember, in a post-war world that was obsessed with science and things you could actually see and measure, this was super appealing. The theory was simple. All learning, and I mean everything, from our rat in a lab pressing a lever to a student learning to speak French, it was all just habit formation. You provide a stimulus, you get a response, and you reinforce it. The language lab, with the headphones and the tape recorders, it was basically the perfect machine for this. So our classroom gets another makeover. The silent study hall is gone. Now it's a stage. And the teacher? They're the director, leading the students through this highly rehearsed performance of drills and dialogues, all of it designed to build those perfect automatic language habits. But, of course, the story doesn't stop there. Because while all these classrooms were busy drilling habits into students, another revolution was quietly brewing. And this one was all about what happens inside a learner's mind, arguing that was way more important than what you could see on the outside. And get this, just as behaviorism was becoming the big thing in schools, a linguist by the name of Noam Chomsky was about to throw a giant wrench into the whole machine. Chomsky's argument was so powerful because it was so simple. He said, look, we can all create and understand sentences we've never ever heard before. Think about it. That would be completely impossible if language was just a bunch of memorized habits. So his conclusion was a bombshell. We must have some kind of built-in internal grammar, a set of rules that lets us be infinitely creative. Language isn't just copying, it's creating. At the very same time, a totally different movement was challenging that cold, mechanical view of the student. Humanistic psychology started asking these really important questions like, hey, what about the student as a person? What about their feelings, their anxiety, their motivation? The big idea here was that you just can't separate learning from emotion. So the teacher's role had to change again, from a kind of drill sergeant to more of a counselor, someone who creates a safe and supportive space to learn. So you have these two massive forces, the cognitive revolution from Chomsky and the humanistic one. And together they paved the way for what we now think of as the modern era of language teaching, an era where the end goal isn't perfect grammar or perfect habits, but something way more useful, just communication. This gave us this really important idea of communicative competence. And the new goal wasn't just knowing the grammar rules anymore. It was knowing the rules of how to actually use the language. When is it okay to be informal? How do you interrupt someone without being rude? It's all about being not just grammatically correct, but socially appropriate. And what does this look like in practice? Well, it probably looks a lot like the language classroom you remember. The whole focus is on doing stuff with the language. You're completing a task, maybe planning a trip, using real maps, or trying to order from a real menu. You're working in pairs or groups, and, this is a big one, making mistakes is totally fine. It's seen as a natural, normal part of learning, not a failure. And so, our visual journey through time ends here, in a classroom that's all about collaboration. The teacher isn't the sage on the stage anymore. Instead, you see students working together, trying to figure things out, and actively using the language to actually get things done. So, after this whole long journey, where are we now? Well, we've landed in a place with a much more complete and, frankly, practical idea of what language learning is all about. Today, you see this whole communicative idea standardized in things like the Common European Framework, or CEFR. It's basically a guide that gives everyone a common language to talk about skill level. And it's not about how many grammar rules you've memorized. It's all about what you can actually do with the language out there in the real world. When you boil it all down, the whole story is really about how we answered one simple question. What's the goal? We started with the goal of analyzing texts. Then it became imitating habits. Then it was about understanding internal rules. And finally, we landed on where we are today. The goal is to communicate. And that brings us to one last big thought. Our methods have always changed to meet the needs of the times, right? But what about now? We live in an age where AI can translate pretty much anything for us, instantly. So what does that mean for the future of language learning? What's the point? What becomes the main goal now? Honestly, that's a question that the next generation of teachers and learners is going to have to figure out. Thanks for joining me.